Hey guys, Sko here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Battle for Azeroth Alpha, which was just released a couple of days ago. I've been streaming the game a lot, been trying out all the different tank classes available, and I've been getting asked a ton of questions on stream as to what I think about the various tanks, what I think about the changes, what I think about, anything tanking related really, what's my feedback. And so to kind of try and answer that question, or the questions, I've made this video. So let's get into it. So we're going to look at Warrior first, guys. My original main character, which I'm hoping to return to on BFA. So I'm hoping that Blizzard is kind to the Warrior class, the Protection Warrior class. And the first thing you're going to notice on Warrior is that you're going to get two new raid-wide buffs in the form of Battle Shout and Rallying Cry. Battle Shout is increasing your strength and agility by 10% to all raid and party members, and Rallying Cry is the 15% increase to max health for 10 seconds to all raid and party members. Now, it's very nice that Warrior is obviously getting these two buffs that they bring to the group. It obviously adds a lot of utility to the class alongside the already existing utility that they keep in the form of Inspiring Presence right now, which is obviously great. And I think we're going to see more utility probably being rolled out to some other classes in the near future on the alpha, but for now it's obviously great that Warrior is getting all this utility. It's adding a lot of value to bringing a Protection Warrior into your raid group or your party group. So moving on to the abilities of the Warrior itself. Shield block has been changed slightly, guys. It lasts for 4 seconds now, and the rage cost has been increased quite significantly. That is lasting 2 seconds shorter than what it currently does on live, and costing 20 more rage to be exact. The recharge time itself has stayed very similar, pretty much the same actually, assuming your haste levels is the same, of course. So basically you could say that when it comes to shield block alone, this is actually a nerf. However, you've got to obviously consider the application of shield block in the bigger picture. And Ignore Pain is something, the other Warrior defensive is something that's been changed significantly for Battle for Azeroth. Now, the way that Ignore Pain works now, and I'm glad this has been changed, is that it's a 12-second cooldown, and it can't be reduced by haste. So it's a static 12-second cooldown, and it has a 4-second uptime, which, when it's up, it reduces the damage you take by 60%. And in doing so, it consumes some of your rage. Now, this is an extremely strong cooldown, as you guys can imagine, especially when the direction of Battle for Azeroth is moving tanks away from having some kind of magic mitigation, and it's much more of a focus on physical mitigation and, increasing armor and such. So it's actually very insane to see that Warriors have like a 60% damage reduction ability like this every 12 seconds that lasts for 4 seconds. So it's very, very powerful in the way that the game is currently set up. That being said, of course, Warrior does still have Spell Reflect, although it does reduce magic damage by 30% rather than 50% now. But just the fact that we still have that ability is obviously great. So yeah, those changes there, the changes to Shield Block and Ignore Pain, I've been playing around with them obviously quite a bit on the alpha now, and they're fine. For sure, I'm definitely enjoying the Ignore Pain changes. I'm definitely optimistic that this is a better approach than what was currently going on in Legion, because as you guys know, Warriors kind of fell a little bit by the wayside. So yeah, I'm definitely pretty optimistic. There's some other changes that have come in, like for example, Shield Slam generates 5 less rage. Thunderclap doesn't reduce movement speed as much anymore. It's reduced it by 20% instead of 50%. And, in general with Battle for Azeroth, the AoE duration, the AoE stun duration, I guess you could say, has been reduced across the board. So Shockwave now only stuns targets for 2 seconds. But yeah, in general, guys, I mean, I've been playing around with the Warrior. Like I said, it's obviously with pre-made gear, and as I'm around about level 113 right now, my haste has dropped quite low. I think I'm around about 14-15% haste. You got to remember on live servers I am playing with around 30%. And so yeah, there's definitely times I found where I had a few empty globals to play with, so to speak, as in I didn't really have anything to do so much. But in general, I do quite like the way that Warrior feels at the moment. It felt extremely strong in the dungeons that I did. I felt very strong there, and I definitely am optimistic about the future of Warrior and Battle for Azeroth. I actually forgot to mention one thing as well, that the cooldown on Demo Shout has been reduced to 1 minute. And this is actually quite nice because it means it syncs with Battle Cry perfectly now. Or Battle Cry is now known as Recklessness. But basically, you know, when you're playing Warrior with Booming Voice, those two abilities, Demo Shout and Battle Cry, they will now sync up 100%, which is a great little change. It's been a nuisance for a lot of Warriors, I guess, for a while. And that's the same as if you have Anger Management. Obviously, both those cooldowns get reduced at the same rate. So they will always sync up now if you use them at the same time. So that's a good change. So, I mean, in overall summary, guys, when it comes to Prot Warrior, it's feeling good. It's feeling strong in dungeons. And at this point, I am feeling positive about Warrior. Now, let's move on to Druid. Now, there's been significant, well, not significant, but there's been some pretty game-changing changes, I would say, in my opinion at least. Like, I'm thinking ahead, obviously, to raids. And right now, Druids are no longer able to take the talent Guttural Roars. Which basically means that your Stampeding Roar is going to be on a 2-minute cooldown. It's going to have slightly less range, I believe, if I remember the talent correctly. Now, that's obviously, I mean, the Guardian Druid Roar was a huge part of progress raiding. I've discussed this multiple times, I think, in some of the past tanking videos on the channel. So the fact that their Roar is now going to be on 2 minutes and have slightly less range, that's obviously a significant nerf in regards to the raid utility. I'm not saying it wasn't needed, but yeah, it's definitely a big nerf. You're going to feel that. It's been replaced by Tiger Dash, which is basically a mega fast dash in cat form on 45-second cooldown, which replaces the cat form dash itself. So it's nice for your personal mobility, but your raid utility is obviously going to suffer as a result. Now, the other thing you're obviously going to notice is that there's no artifacts in Battle for Azeroth right now, and the artifact ability for Druids is the Rage of the Sleeper is completely gone. Now, you feel this particularly on Druids because the Druid artifact ability, Rage of the Sleeper, is probably the strongest artifact ability in the game. It was an awesome cooldown, helped your damage and so on, and that's been completely removed. So that's obviously, you're feeling that quite hard. You also, as a result, no longer have your artifact weapon, which is stacked with, you know, let's say 3 out of 3 Thrash relics, and also, of course, the Thrash talent on your artifact relics, which gives you that 15% chance. I think it is to, you know, have a second Thrash on application. So, in general, your Thrash damage is going to feel pretty garbage after not having the artifact traits and everything. After all. And I must say, guys, that when playing Druid, and I've played it quite a bit, I've finished the entire Alliance questing zone with the Guardian Druid. I feel as if Druid's damage right now is the worst out of all the tanks, which is not good, obviously. And that goes with AoE as well, guys. It even feels quite lackluster with the AoE damage, the Thrash and Swipe combination that we're so used to. Other changes that are worth noting, of course, is that Balance of Affinity. It now only increases the range of your abilities by 3 yards instead of 5. And Frenzied Regen, you're back down to having 2 charges of Frenzied Regen, guys. And it heals you for a maximum of 25% of your hit points. Now, on the live servers, this wasn't capped like this. Obviously, it could also heal you less if you hadn't taken so much damage. But overall, I wouldn't say that this is something that you should be grateful for, that you're looking forward to. And the fact that it's 2 charges instead of 3, you're going to notice that straight away as well. Now, on top of that, it's also got a 50% longer recharge time. So you're going to notice yourself using Frenzied Regen or having Frenzied Regen as a cooldown a lot less. And in the potential use of you using it after a large hit, it's not going to heal you as much as before. So that in itself, the Frenzied Regen is also a nerf. Now, overall, guys, Druid, how am I feeling about Druids? I'm feeling pretty negative about Druid changes I've seen so far. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, guys. Moving on to Paladin. Shield of the Righteous. The main changes you're going to see with Paladin, guys, is Shield of the Righteous. And what's interesting about Shield of the Righteous is that you can actually now use it without having a target. And so you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's amazing. That means you can use Shield of the Righteous when you're, 20 yards from the boss and it's casting like a spell, or casting like a big AoE or something to reduce the damage on yourself. However, that being said, Shield of the Righteous has changed so that it actually only buffs your armor. It's no longer a flat damage reduction. And this is in line with Blizzard's general mindset at the moment, guys, where the tank active mitigation is generally focused on reducing physical damage. A lot of it is indeed just through increasing your own individual armor. And Shield of the Righteous is something that they've done this to. Now this is interesting because Paladins in the past, you know, they were always really strong against magic damage because they had this Shield of the Righteous that was, you know, it didn't matter the source of the damage, it was gonna be reduced by Shield of the Righteous. Now Shield of the Righteous is pretty much only reducing down your physical damage component, which changes the game a little bit for Paladins. It's going to be interesting to see how Paladins deal with the magic damage in potential raids. Again, like I said, it's still very early days, of course, on the alpha, but of course they do have a lot of cooldowns at their disposal. You know, Ardent Defender, Guardian of Ancient Kings, I think it's called. Aegis of Light, if you really want to get that extra cooldown, Blessing of Spell Warding, and so on, guys. You understand what I'm saying? I guess if you've got large cooldowns you can probably use to get rid of some of the potential boss casts. But it does mean that Paladins overall are going to be a lot more vulnerable to magic attacks going forward. I mean, obviously one option they can do to try and reduce magic damage is by taking the Holy Shield talent, which increases your block by 15% and allows you to block spells. I think with the rough block percentage on the character I was playing, that's about maybe 1 in 3 spells would be blocked, and if the spell was blocked, it would be a 40% damage reduction on that spell. So nowhere near in the realm of what Shield of the Righteous was doing to spells before these changes. But that being said, Shield of the Righteous, like I said, it can be used without harming a target. It also is an AoE now instead of just, you know, hitting a single target, so it hits everything in front of the Paladin, which is nice for things like dungeons, of course. And that being said, I must say that Paladins felt, when I was playing my Protection Paladin, I actually felt really, really strong in dungeons. Now, I'm not sure if this is because the healer was just really good, or the group was really good, and it's hard to tell with, you know, playing just with the absolute default Blizzard UI. But the 2 dungeons I did with my Paladin, they felt extremely easy. The Troll dungeon, in fact, it felt like I was basically not losing any hit points at all. I felt almost invincible. And so Paladin did feel really strong. So I am quite optimistic about Paladin, and I do think it's going to be a strong choice, definitely when it comes to dungeons and such. But I mean, it's as we know, it's ridiculously early days to start thinking about how they might interact with raids and everything. But the lack of, you know, the fact that Shield of the Righteous now is only focusing on armor, it definitely raises some eyebrows, I guess you could say. It's also worth noting that Ardent Defender, the cooldown is significantly longer now, and I say that even though the base cooldown itself is the same. It is a 2-minute cooldown, but you've got to remember on Live Realms, guys, I have 7 relics, 7 traits even, in Ardent Defender, which is reducing it by 70 seconds. So on Live Realms right now, I have my AD on 50-second cooldown, and on Alpha right now, it's just the base 2-minute cooldown. So you guys can see that it's over 2 times as long a cooldown right now. But yeah, when it comes to Paladins, despite the concerns, I am, I guess you could say, optimistic. So I'm feeling okay about it. We'll see how things develop down the line. But overall, right now, at least for dungeons and everything, and for leveling, the damage is good. Dungeons, you're very strong. So I'm feeling pretty good about Paladin. Death Knight, Bone Shield again it's only going to increase your armor now. It does not just, you know, give you like a flat damage reduction. Generates 3 charges. Death Strike is now healing for 30% of damage taken over the last 5 seconds. This is actually a 10% increase over what is on live right now. But you're actually losing a lot from switching from live to alpha though when you play Death Knight. I'm mainly thinking towards the artifact traits and talent tree that for Death Knight was really strong. I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be hard for DK losing that Soul Drinker talent, for example, where, you know, overhealing from Death Strike would increase your hit points and such. In general, I feel, you know, the Death Knight artifact tree was quite significant in making Death Knight as strong a tank as it was. And so, yeah, they're obviously trying to compensate a little bit with, you know, the increased healing on Death Strike, and they've also given you a small buff to Veteran of the Third War, the passive talent, by increasing your armor by 5%. But Bone Shield, like I said, is increasing your your armor now rather than your damage reduction. DK still have a ton of cooldowns. You know, they still have the Icebound Fortitude, Vampiric Blood, Anti-Magic Shell. It is worth noting though that Vampiric Blood in itself, again because of no artifact talents, it's significantly weaker on alpha than it is on live. In fact, on live servers, my Vampiric Blood has 6 traits on it, so it's 60%, 60% versus the alpha build, which is 30%, 30%. So that's quite a big difference there. DKs have also been given Death's Advanced talent. Now, I think this is a talent that DKs may have had in the past, or at least they may have had it on different specs in the past. And this is an interesting talent because it basically makes DKs, or I'm assuming it should make DKs immune to things like knockbacks. So think about Kil'jaeden. Think about Kil'jaeden's knockback, for example. Death's Advanced could be an answer to that. Basically, it just stops you from getting knocked back, and it reduces down the reduction you'd receive from movement impairing effects. In the talent tree, they've actually said that Spectral Deflection is a talent that hasn't yet been implemented. So they might be changing that, which is interesting because Spectral Deflection has been a baseline talent for Death Knights, obviously when it comes to raiding, for quite a while in the past. So I'm curious to see what they're doing with Spectral Deflection. There's also another new ability that Death Knights have as baseline, which is a new ability called Thoughtseize. It's not fully implemented yet, but basically the way it works at the moment is that it is a spell steal. So you can spell steal a magic effect, and if you use the ability again, you can actually move that magic effect onto a friendly target. So I think there's going to be some interesting applications of that, especially in 5-man dungeons. I'm curious to see how Blizzard is going to balance that, if that is the case, because, you know, with the MDI and everything, Blizzard are trying to make sure the 5-man dungeons are fair and balanced. So, but at the same time, I'm sure if this spell continues like it is right now, there will be some ways that it can probably be exploited. And another reason, I guess, as to why you'd want a DK tank. But we'll wait and see, I guess. Honestly, it's hard to say how I feel about Blood DK right now. Like I said, I feel that as if Blood DK in particular, the artifact tree and traits and everything were really important to its overall strength. I mean, it feels okay. It plays somewhat similar. But I don't know. It obviously feels a little bit slower. It could just be a gearing issue again. But I guess I could sum up my thoughts about Blood DK right now as being relatively neutral. I guess it's a kind of a wait and see scenario at this point. So moving on to Monk. Now, Monk, you're not going to notice too many changes with Monk. I feel as if that's the case. The first thing you're going to notice really is that the magic damage you can stagger has been reduced by about half its value. So stagger for physical damage has been kept the same, but for the effectiveness at which you can stagger magical damage has been reduced by about 50%. So you will be taking more damage from magical attacks as a monk. Even, you know, if you're spec into Mystic Vitality, it's obviously going to have a lesser of an impact than it did previously. Purifying Brew has been slightly increased. Now it purifies, you know, a few percentages higher in regards to the stagger. I think on live, for example, I have 43%. On alpha, it's 50%. Iron Skin Brew, its cooldown has been reduced by about 30% on alpha. However, you've got to remember there's no artifact talents in the game anymore, which are increasing its uptime. It's also staggering 5% less damage than it is on live. So it's doing 30% on alpha and it's doing 35% on live. So that's a little bit of a nerf. But like I said, the cooldown has been reduced by about 30% on alpha. So again, overall, big picture side of things, it's not really a huge nerf or not really a huge change. Breath of Fire is now baseline in regards to reducing target damage done to you by 5%. That again just replaces an artifact trait effectively, which used to be, you know, the old artifact trait called Hot Blooded. So again, not a huge change. And you're going to get a new talent as a monk right now, which is called Tiger Tail Sweep, guys. That basically replaces the point where you used to have the Leg Sweep, but Leg Sweep is now a base talent. And if you choose to take Tiger Tail Sweep, you can increase the Leg Sweep range to 7 yards instead of 5, and also reduce the Leg Sweep cooldown by 10 seconds. Now, the Leg Sweep that you get by baseline is actually only a 1 minute cooldown, so it is a longer cooldown than what you're used to with Leg Sweep. Leg Sweep's normally 45 seconds, I believe. But what's interesting really is that you can obviously choose to take the Tiger Tail Sweep talent, or you can obviously then choose to have like another crowd control like Ring of Peace or something similar. Again, like I said about warriors, AoE stuns are much shorter on the alpha than they are on live. The stun time on alpha for leg sweep is 3 seconds, whereas on live it's 5 seconds. But in regards to Monk, like I said guys, nothing has really changed. Blizzard have just tweaked the way that magic damage is staggered a little bit to bring it more in line with the other tanks that are obviously trying to, you know, put more emphasis on physical damage reduction rather than magic damage reduction. And so I think that Monk is still looking, you know, it's relatively unchanged. It's still obviously going to be relatively solid as a result of that. Damage-wise, it would seem to be around the mid-level while leveling. I have done one dungeon with the Monk, but it's not one of the classes I played a lot on right now on the Alpha. Overall, I mean, I'm relatively satisfied with how it is because, to be honest, there isn't really much that you can't be satisfied with. It's kind of almost the same as Legion. It's very similar in terms of adaptation. So, feeling decent about Monk, feeling decent. Moving on to Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter is actually a hard one to really play because right now on the Alpha, whenever you cast a Sigil, it is causing a lag spike. And so I've really spent almost no time on Demon Hunter other than a short burst of leveling. At which point, you know, the damage was insane, actually. It was very good for leveling. You could do big AoE pools, good AoE damage, and the self-heal, the self-sustainability was absolutely insane. So that's definitely a good thing that you've obviously got going for you with Demon Hunter, is it does seem to be good in terms of damage output and everything, self-sustainability as you'd expect. But Demon Hunter itself has seen a lot of changes to talents. Burning Alive talent, it's been nerfed to jump every 5.2 seconds instead of every 2 seconds on live. There's a new talent available called Charred Flesh, which replaced Fell Eruption. And this basically increases fire damage by 20%. This actually used to be an artifact trait before, so it's actually kind of a nerf because the artifact trait before was 10% per point. And this is obviously only 20% when it's previously 30% by absolute default. So that talent is an option there if you want to pick it though. Soul Rending is now giving you a 5% passive leech and a 25% on meta, whereas before it was giving you 50% leech on meta only. Feed the Demon reduces the cooldown of Demon Spikes by 0.5 seconds on Alpha, whereas it used to reduce it by 1 second on Live, so that's obviously a nerf. Fracture has received big changes. Fracture now generates 25 pain and provides 2 soul fragments. On Live, this actually costs 30 pain rather than generates. And as a result of that, on Alpha, it actually replaces your sheer ability. So if you pick Fracture, your sheer ability is removed from your talent book. Sigil of Chain has a slightly higher CD on Alpha. Very small though. We're only talking like, I think it's like an extra 20 seconds or something, 10, 15. Gluttony is a new talent that has been put into the Demon Hunter talent tree, but it's actually just one of the artifact traits, one of the golden traits that you used to have in Legion. Basically, you know, it's the one that basically procs meta sometimes when consuming a soul fragment. Spirit Bomb has been changed. It's capped at 3 soul fragments now, heals for 10% instead of 20%, and it completely replaces Soul Cleave. So if you pick Spirit Bomb, that replaces Soul Cleave, just like the Fracture replaces Sheer. Now, Fell Devastation is an option still, and it actually costs no pain now if you choose this talent, and Soul Barrier is still there as well, and it also costs no pain. So there's a few tweaks there. Now, it's worth mentioning that we talked about Spirit Bomb and Fracture replacing, you know, Sheer and Soul Cleave. It does feel like when you're playing Demon Hunter that you kind of are missing a few key bindings. Like one key binding in particular, it feels like you're missing. Like, for example, when you play Warrior, you're used to having the Revenge, the Thunderclap, the Shield Slam. When you're playing Demon Hunter, it feels like there might be one ability potentially missing. It just feels that way when assigning the key bindings. But like I said, I haven't really played it enough to say that with confidence. But I can definitely tell you that the key bindings right now when looking at Demon Hunter are definitely a little bit scarce compared to some of the other tanks. There's been some other big changes to Demon Hunter, by the way, that we should mention. Like Demon Spikes has now got a longer cooldown. It's got no pain cost anymore, which is good for certain situations. Like you can imagine now that with Demon Spikes, you could technically charge into a fight or you know, leap onto mobs and instantly put up Demon Spikes, so you don't leave yourself vulnerable where you have to build pain. So that's a good change. There's a pain-free ability. Of course, that's a good change. It's going to be interesting to see with the increased cooldown. But I need some more time to try out Demon Hunter, guys. There is a new passive for Demon Hunter called Chaos Brand, which increases magic damage against the target by 5%. I would assume again that this is just a passive buff that's been given to Demon Hunters to make up for artifact trait losses. Demonic Wards is actually being nerfed, believe it or not. It's nerfed to a 10% damage reduction, down from 20%. Now, something big has been added actually to Demon Hunters, something new, and that is the fact that on the Shattered Soul passive, there's a new text line being added that says, consuming a lesser soul fragment heals you for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds. Now, that's a very interesting buff, I guess you could say, to Demon Hunters. It's going to be pretty huge in regards to increasing your self-sustainability and also your healing, your self-healing. It does mean that Demon Hunter, you know, the angle that Blizzard's going for is definitely that they want to keep Demon Hunters a reactive tank rather than a pro-reactive tank, which, when it comes to raiding progress, is generally not a good thing. But I can already imagine Demon Hunters having an absolute ton of self-healing. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, Demon Hunter, how am I feeling about Demon Hunter right now? I mean, I want to say optimistic. Like, I after the Legion, I feel as if, you know, I understand obviously that Demon Hunter and Legion at this point is decent for 5-mans. But when it comes to a rating point of view, Demon Hunter was really lackluster for basically the entire Legion. And so I think I do want to remain optimistic that Blizzard's not going to let this happen to Demon Hunter again. But at the same time, I really haven't spent enough time on Demon Hunter to really come up with a good, I guess you could say, opinion of how I feel about the class right now. So I'll leave it as a neutral right now, but there has been a lot of changes to Demon Hunter, more than most other tanks actually. So it would be interesting to try out as long as it's not too laggy. But yeah, that being said, guys, I do want to say that this is the earliest alpha build that's been released to the public, and so, well, the public, so to speak. And so I want to just remind you that this, like every single one of these tank classes is probably going to get changed, right? And none of what I'm saying right now is probably going to be relevant in the next few months after you know, a few different builds come in and we actually start to see the classes being maybe a bit more rounded out in terms of balance and everything else. But I do want to make this video anyway because you guys are asking me repeatedly, you know, in Twitch chat, you know, what I think about X, Y, Z. And so hopefully this will give you guys the rundown of my, you know, thoughts on at least the tanks in this very current patch. But yeah. And other than that, I just want to say thanks so much for watching this video. Throw me a sub on YouTube if you enjoyed it. I will see you guys on stream. Have a great day, guys.